Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Farmers Guardians webinar, focused on new entrants and how to forge a successful career within the agricultural sector. Please bear with me tonight, as I seem to have got the same flu that everyone appears to have got, but we'll crack on for what promises to be a great webinar. It's so good to have lots of you joining us here tonight, a clear indication of the popularity of this subject, thinking about the future workforce, which is at the heart of sustainable agriculture, how we make the industry as inviting as possible for anyone who wants to be part of it, regardless of backgrounds, has never been so important in this current climate. The aim of tonight's webinar is to hear personal experiences of new entrants into farming, the challenges that have come across so far, and of course, the opportunities. My fantastic panel will be sharing their best tips and advice, but also their views on how we entice more people into agriculture from a grassroots level right up to the highest level of government policy. For those that haven't attended Farmers Guardian webinar before, welcome. And how it tends to work is introductions from panel and a bit of a Q&A with just the panel members. And then the second half of the session, we'll be answering your questions. So this is my plea to everyone at home watching. If you do have a question, please do put it in the chat below and we'll do our very best to get your questions answered. This is your opportunity to put questions to this brilliant panel who really have a grasp and understanding of the topic and are passionate about making the industry accessible to anyone and everyone who wants to join. First up, if I can ask tonight's panel to briefly introduce themselves, what you do and how you got into agriculture. Brona, if you would like to start first, please.
No problem. Good evening, everyone. I am Brona Dempster. I currently work in the dairy industry Monday to Friday for a processor. I'm a sustainability project manager, and at the weekend I get back down to earth and do dairy farming at a local dairy farm. I don't come from a farming background at all, and I suppose how I got into agriculture was just general curiosity as a child, which grew significantly from then. So I studied agriculture at uni, and here I am with a career in it, working towards hopefully being able to farm in my own right someday alongside my career as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Brona. Ben, do you want to go up next?
Good evening, everyone. My name's Ben McClymont, and I am Farms and Estate Manager for Sauckland and Crichton Farms, just 20 minutes south of Edinburgh. We're a mixed agri-business with beef, sheep, and arable farming, as well as a number of diversified businesses, which I oversee, including the Vineyard Business Centre, which I'm in just now, which is converted offices. We have commercial and residential lets. I've been in this role for a number of years now, and was very fortunate, I think, at my age to be given a role like this. And yeah, and find it quite exciting, I suppose, as an industry that we get so much opportunity. My background is I grew up on a dairy farm. My father was a farms manager, not a family farm. Always knew or always had a love for our industry. Went on to study in Edinburgh and got my degree in agriculture. Traveled for a while and then settled back down to work and have ended up in this role in which I'm in now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben. And Jackie?
Evening, everyone. So I'm Jackie Hough. I'm a family farm owner in the Bowland Fells, and we farm predominantly sheep and are on grassland and turkeys every year. And we fatten the odd beef cow as well. And in my day job, if that's not a day job on its own, I'm also a full-time industry manager for land-based at City and Guilds, and that means that I work across the whole of the land-based industry, ranging from agriculture through to animals, equine, trees, hort, land-based engineering, and everything in between. So I cover that and work with all the industry bodies and employers. So land-based is really at the heart of what I do. And prior to City and Guilds, I worked at a land-based college for many years, lecturing to agriculture, animals, and equine students. So across degrees and FE. So literally, I think everything about me is land-based. So nice to meet you all.
Brilliant. It's great to have you on the panel, Jackie. I'm not sure how you fit it all in, but you do. And last but not least, Jessie.
Hello. So I am a new entrant farmer. I farm with my husband. We're 18 months into our tenancy. We also have 2 or 3 diversification businesses, both on and off site. We farm beef, pigs. We're just about to open a micro dairy. And then we've also got some small scale poultry for breeding and eggs as well. So we literally sort of have ended up doing a complete mix of livestock. We've done sheep. I just happen to have sold them to concentrate on the cattle and the pigs this year. So I've ended up in farming purely by, I've always had an interest in it. I've always been an outside sort of person. I helped out on farms growing up. And then I married a 4th generation farmer. And, you know, we went through the tenancy bids and eventually got ourselves a council holding. So yeah, we're kind of on this journey, and it's long and hard and a very steep learning curve in every direction.
No, I bet it is. It's brilliant to have you on the panel, Jessie. I think that kind of ties in nicely with my first question in terms of, as a new entrant yourself, what is the best advice you would give to someone that is looking to get that first step into the farming sector?
I think get as much experience from as many different areas, places, and sectors as you can, and as much advice as you can. So I was really lucky. I did the DEFRA new entrant scheme. What was it? Almost 2 years ago now, which I think was really good. It was industry specific in terms of the overview. So we learned a lot about holistic farming, a lot about regenerative things, all the buzzwords which sort of put into the thing, but it also gave you a lot of time to hone the business plans. And I think your business plan and your finances are so key, and more key than you think. You know, you can be a fantastic farmer, but actually if you haven't got that paperwork side, it's virtually impossible to get into. The banks won't come near you, agents won't come near you. It's having that paperwork and, you know, asking for as many people to look at it and to support you with it as you can is a really, really good way.
No, absolutely. And I think that point you make about business and finances, that's really in focus, particularly at the moment in the current climate. You mentioned about having a council tenancy. How valuable was that council tenancy for you on your journey?
I mean, it's essential. So because my husband's family farm, we felt very tied location wise. So we weren't going to be looking, you know, for estates in all over the place. We had a very specific geographical location. And we were quite lucky that the council has a fair amount of holdings, but none had come up for years. And there were 3 came up inside a year. We went for all of them. We didn't get the first 2, but then we did get this 3rd one, which was the smallest. But it's a foot in the door and it's a start. And I think what we had done before this was we'd rented some ground, we'd rented some land, we made ourselves a start, which we did. So the year before we moved here, we raised calves in a rented shed. And then we were also raising 75 cad lambs in a different shed. So we were driving across multiple locations, and kind of it was absolutely mad. And we've got we had a baby and a toddler at that stage. So my husband was going off to one location to do calves with one child. I was going to do lambs in another location with another child. It was absolutely insane. But I think it shows that dedication. And what we found is that people want to see that you can do it and you can stick to it and you can make it work. We started this by basically just going for it on a wing and a prayer, and we stuck everything into it. If we hadn't got this tendency, we would have been slightly scuppered, but we did. So.
No, definitely. Perseverance and resilience seem to be kind of the key themes that you were bringing out there, Jessie, definitely. Yeah. Brona, I wanted to go to you next. Obviously, you're from a non-farming background. Just wanted to kind of get a sense of some of the challenges that maybe you faced coming from a non-farming background, and what do you think the sector can do more to entice more people from backgrounds like yourself to come into farming and not that traditional farming background?
Yeah, so in terms of challenges, I would say people from a non-farming background perhaps have to work a little bit harder when it comes to agricultural education. We maybe don't have the conversations around kitchen tables about heifers or hoggets every night, and maybe not too sure what those things are. So it was, yeah, just trying to educate myself as much as possible. But there is probably I feel in the last sort of 6 years it has got better, but there probably is a little bit of bias against those from a non-farming background in the industry. But like I say, I think that's come on actually leaps and bounds in the last sort of 6 years since I started university. And in terms of making things better, just think just being welcoming to other skills and other perspectives. I came into the industry with sort of no bias or no preconceptions, willing to learn, whether it be the right way or the wrong way, and just making people feel really, really welcome into the industry as well.
Thank you for that, Brona. And Jackie, I wanted to go to you next in terms of education. So at Farmers Guardian here, we have a real focus on education, trying to drive that onto the curriculum and really promoting the sector. How important is education to making sure that we make the sector, agriculture, a really attractive industry for people to think about as a potential career?
I think it is incredibly important. And I think that how different sort of educational establishments and different organisations supporting agriculture, livestock, crop, etc., how they also get involved in different activities. And I think the younger we can start to actually promote those opportunities, I think really helps as well. I mean, from my point of view, I'm from a non-farming background, so I'm completely land-based for many, many years, but completely non-farming background. And my mum and dad always used to joke that if they'd had me in a hospital, that they'd probably got me mixed up in the hospital because I've always been completely animals and farming oriented. But my actual family itself, nothing to do with it at all. So I think there's something within people as well, but I think that how people get exposed to all of those opportunities, even things like Open Farm Sunday and all of those different initiatives, I think have a big impact. And I think colleges reaching out into schools as well. And I think that the actual qualifications that are out there for people, if we take obviously City and Guilds, we have the T level, great opportunities within that for people and to progress as well into different aspects of farming. And I think that for me, it's that vast diversity within just agriculture itself. People are just not aware of that at all. And it's how we actually spread that word. And I think that the more that things like this happen, I think helps. And it's just raising that profile. I was recently at Lama and some of the panels there, and I think social media has a big impact as well. If you look at some of the people who, I was on a panel down at Lamo with Caleb and Charlotte Ashley, etc. And they are synonymous with farming. And I think that the reach that people have on social media is also having a big impact, and it's actually sort of spreading the news to people about what it's all about and all the different exciting opportunities. So yeah, I think it has a key part to play, and I think all of the things that everyone engages with now also links in.
No, definitely. Thank you for that, Jackie. And Ben, you alluded in your opening speech in terms of the position that you're in today. For a young guy, it's a very privileged position to be in. And I just wondered, in terms of the opportunities when you were first starting out, what were the opportunities? Were there particular people that really had your back? Just how have you kind of forged such a successful career at such an early age?
Luck, I think, is probably the large majority of it. No, was there people that stood out? I did, I suppose I did a number of things. When I was going through, as soon as I was 14 and allowed to go and work for somebody else, I got away from home and I actually worked as a gardener for the big house next door and then went on to the garden centre. Nothing farming related, but I got out away from home, away from mum and dad and whatever was going on the farm at home, and learned to work with other people from a totally different sector or background as to what I was in. Albeit as soon as I turned 16 and got my tractor license, I was straight back into agriculture and spending every hour I could driving a tractor. And then I think but I think the point being, when I was 14, there was that sort of work ethic that was built into you from an early age. When I was 16, I was spending all day driving tractors, contracting. I was then going home to do the morning milking and then going back out on a tractor. I wouldn't dream of doing it now. I was absolutely knackered, but you managed at that age. So working blooming hard, and a bit like Jesse said, is proving to people that I suppose that you're looking for help or guidance from, proving to them that you're made of strong stuff. You can crack on and do it. But a lot of the opportunities that came my way, I think one, I went to university. Sometimes I look back on that thinking, was that the right thing to do? I would probably have learned a lot more practical farming skills if I'd stayed working on farm for those 4 years that I had at university. But I'm very fortunate to now have that bit of paper. It probably means nothing to a lot of people, but it gave me that little step up when I came to sit down at an interview and say, look, this is what I've done practically, but I've also managed to, I suppose, prove my worth to sit in exam conditions and put that knowledge on paper. And then, so got that degree. A degree is not for everyone, and back to education, I think there's actually agricultural degrees. There's a huge amount of work needed, I think, to bring them sort of back into or back up. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but bring them up to date. There's a lot of stuff that, but I think things are changing that quickly in agriculture just now that actually education maybe struggles to keep up. But the one thing we didn't do in my degree, which I believe happens south of the border, and we didn't take a placement year. And I know friends that were at Harper say they had a year out within industry, and I think that is really valuable and also really valuable for people that don't come from a farming background. I had folks alongside me that weren't from farming, and it's a bit like what Brona said about having that sort of base level knowledge of a bit like a heifer and a hog. That's something that if you are in farming circles, you'll pick up. But if you're not, and then you're thrown into a lecture and it's spoken about, me and whoever that's from a farm will go, oh, yeah, yeah, we understand that. But the person that doesn't want to ask either because they don't want to be the one person that sticks out and doesn't know. So there's a lot in education that needs to change. And just my final point in education, we have a fantastic charity in Scotland called the Royal Highland Education Trust, and it is purely based and set up to get children out on farm to learn about where their food comes from. And also I'm a trustee of our local group, and we're starting to do a lot more with older pupils at school to show, look, there's a huge career opportunity within agriculture, and it's not, as everybody seems to see farming as muddy boots shoveling SH1T. We have so much to offer, and actually we're not very good at shouting about that.
No, completely agree. Very, very valid points. And I think that education piece is so important, but also that connection, which we take for granted, that food and farming, they're hand in hand. And I think sometimes there is that disconnect often. Really, really keen to kind of touch upon the political climate right now, and obviously kind of the uncertainty within the sector and the industry. It's relatively negative and there's frustration amongst farmers. How do we make sure that this sector is still inviting for new entrants with the political backdrop going on with farming right now? This is open to the floor, whoever would like to chat.
I'll maybe jump in quickly, seeing as
Go
I'm
ahead, Ben.
on mute. One thing I forgot to say, I currently am chairperson of the National Farmers Union of Scotland's Next Generation Committee. So I get exposed to quite a lot of these things coming at me. And I'm also often the one younger person sitting around the table. So I'm like the token young person that, what shall we do to make our industry better, or how can we be? And I don't have the answer, unfortunately. But one thing we seem to forget about throughout our industry is we are too scared to talk about profit. Our industry will not be enticing to young people if we're not making any money. And we're a fairly substantial, or where I am right now, just now, a fairly substantial beef and sheep unit, and it's blooming difficult to make a good living. So I'd love to say there's lots of opportunity for young people, which there is, but until we get an industry that government are prepared to well, it's not, I'm not looking for support, but we need to see a change within our, well, I think personally it's the cost of food has to change so that there's a realization that food is worth far more than it is currently. And then that has to filter down to the guys on the ground that are producing it. We're doing all the hard work. Then if we have a far more profitable sector, we will have far more opportunity.
No, definitely profitability and those margins have been brought up quite a lot in recent conversations. Jessie, you were nodding your head throughout that.
Yeah, absolutely. I
add
think
anything?
it's, what I've been astonished at coming in from business into farming is how no matter how hard you try, no matter how good you think the margins are going to be, something will come along and swipe it out from underneath you. We had basically because of the rain last year, our grasses weren't very good. We had a really tight calving window and our iodine levels were low. So we lost 1/2 of our herd's worth of calves, which in our budget, that was our rent payment. So it doesn't matter, the margins are so narrow. And I think that's, for me, it comes down to education. It comes down, it's a whole circle thing of educating the public, which starts with educating children and educating young people, of how, basically, as we all know, we're all getting squeezed from the top end. Everyone's profit is added on top of what we do. Our prices are getting squashed and yet our costs are going up. So we're just, we're really narrow in the middle. And people don't understand what that is like on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's what I've found astonishing, coming into farming and going, but what do you mean? And also the variation in prices, that fluctuation, the fact right now the beef prices are phenomenal. But, when I was putting together a budget going, well, what do you mean? You can go 1 week and your steer will be worth £700 and the next week it might be worth £1,400. How do you plan on that? You can't. And that's what is so terrifying. So, we've focused really hard on we've found the end sell before we even start a project. So the micro dairy, I've already sold the milk. I'm not producing. We've got the cows. They're due to calve in March. I know where that milk's going as soon as we start. So I know that, come the spring, we've got the money in to pay for them. But we've done that by sort of making the mistakes of going, yeah, we'll do that, we'll make money on that, and not making money on something. And that's, I think, that's what politicians and Joe Public just don't understand. And, why would they? It's farming is that one thing that we do. We work really hard, we pay all our bills, as soon as we can, but actually that money that comes in is already spent before we've thought about it. And just that kind of, that circle of, it's fair pricing, it's fair everything, and it's got to start with politicians and supermarkets and fair pricing and all of those things, and education and buying locally, not buying things that have come from halfway across the world.
No, definitely. It'll be interesting to see how government policy develops over the next couple of months. Brona, just wanted to go to you next in terms of someone that is at the very beginning of their career. Do you think in terms of the industry as a whole and policy, do you think there's enough focus on new entrants and giving them that financial support to get into the sector?
No, absolutely not. Firstly, I'll sort of address that last question very quickly.
No, of course.
I recognise that the policy and recent decisions made are very controversial within the farming industry, damaging and all the rest. But I would just say to new entrants in particular, where there's change, there will be opportunity as well. And you need to tailor your farm business and your plans to make the most of that opportunity. But as for the sort of opportunities for new entrants itself, I don't feel like in government policy it's often talked about as much as it maybe should. Particularly in Northern Ireland, and this might be a bit niche. There's maybe no listeners from Northern Ireland on this, but we don't have the council farms or the long tenancies. We have this system called Conacre, which is basically like a short-term lease, which isn't written down on paper. But what I will say is that there's a few really good schemes that have started up in the country recently, which hopefully are going along in the mainland as well, such as the Land Mobility Scheme facilitated by the Ulster Farmers Union, and also the Farming for Generations scheme, which is getting underway, which is helping to pair perhaps older farmers or those wanting to step back with a new partner and somebody who's really passionate about getting into the industry too. So I think it's disappointing when sort of organizations outside of government have to take things into their own hand when government is making the decisions around the policies, which might lead to some of those maybe retiring or take a step back as well.
Thank you for that, Bro. And it's really interesting to hear kind of, the difficult landscapes across the devolved nations as well, and the different opportunities and limitations within kind of each sector within each country. Going to you, Jackie, in terms we talk about tenancies, we talk about schemes, but also, grants and funding. How important is those? Do you think there's enough focus on new entrants to give that support?
I sort of answering that question and sort of earlier, I don't think that there is enough support for new entrants. I think sort of listening to sort of all my colleagues here as well, we all agree on that. I just don't think that there is enough support.
Which people, question, because when we talk about sustainability, that narrative of sustainability, which is so in focus right now, that is about going to our next generation. They are going to take the sector forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, at the end of the day, they are the future workforce. And from our point of view here at home, we obviously set up our own farm here in the Bowland Fells. My husband is from a farming family. Unfortunately, for many reasons, their farm centuries ago came under the church commissioners. So when his father and uncle retired, the farm went. And it was a rented farm from that point of view. So my husband's always worked, I've always worked, and sort of our kids as well. And from the point of view of our family farm here, we've built it ourselves. We built it slowly because it's the only way that we've been able to do it. And we all work full time. So our son, who he's a farm manager on a local dairy farm. So we all have very busy jobs. We own our farm and we own all the buildings, the land, etc., and obviously all the stock. However, a lot of our land is also rented, and that brings me to sort of the grants and the schemes and the things that you were asking about them, Rachel. From the point of view of that, if you look at sort of what the government is currently doing, if you look at the way that the grant schemes are set up, it's a real challenge for farmers. It's a challenge for us. The area that we live in, trying to actually get more land is a real problem. Hence, a lot of the land that we have is rented. And due to the way that the rents are set up and how people that you rent from can actually do that on the short-term tenancy for land, it means you can't access a lot of those grants because you have to invest in it for X amount of years. So for us, that is a real issue and a real challenge, and we're not alone across the country. I can see that Jesse's nodding as well, and it is a real challenge. So even from our perspective, it's just not a supportive environment. So hence we've done things very slowly so that we can actually grow and we can sustain it. And we've had to acquire more land because if you're looking at taking stock to auction, etc., you have to have more volume. I can't remember who it was. I think it possibly was Jesse again saying that you can't judge what the auction prices are going to be on your stock. And it's when you're actually paying for rent as well on land and you don't know what your stock's going to factor in at and you can't access a lot of the schemes, it makes life very difficult. But ultimately, we still love it and we still do it because for us it is our passion and it's what we want to grow and do, and that's what our family want to do. So for us, we wouldn't be in it and putting all this investment in it if it wasn't. It is a vocation. It is a true vocation. So yeah, I'm not sure if that really answers your question, Rachel, because I've spread across a
No,
few
no,
things there.
definitely. No, definitely. Thank you, Jackie. I think at this point, I'm going to take a question from the audience. Just a reminder, everyone, if you have a question for our panel, any member of the panel, please do drop it in the box, and I will put a question across. So first question is, they haven't actually declared their name, but they're interested to know if anyone has experience of shared farming, how it works, do they build up shares per year, etc. Does that actually act as a motivator? And what happens when they are accrued so many shares? That makes sense. Who would like to pick this one up? Ben. Perfect. Thanks, Ben.
I don't I'm not share farming. I did farm in New Zealand for a year, in which I had the opportunity to go into share farming business venture, I suppose, and the share in which you got in a dairy farm was being able to buy into owning some of the stock, the cows. Then that allowed you, if you were moving to another opportunity, then you could take those cows with you. So you were building up an asset value in the form of cows, and very much the same in this country. It happens with both in the dairy industry and in beef and sheep. And yeah, you're not, from my understanding, you're not owning a share of the business, but you're owning a share of the assets, in which that is the livestock that's on the place. Share farming, I don't think, works quite so easily in arable farming. And what we do see in arable farming is a lot more contract farming, in which the farm owner is seen as the farmer, and then a new entrant is the contractor who's doing the work, either with their own machinery or using the farmer's machinery, sorry, and then at the end of the year you get a divisible as to a sort of share of the workload and more, not workload, more so risk. Who's taking the biggest risk gets the biggest cut of the profit. So that's one. We have opportunities around here for contract farming, and my one point, and we tendered for one recently, and I wasn't successful in getting it, and it came down to cost, and the opportunity, the person offering reckoned I was too expensive. I said, that's fine. But I think there was a learning point for me there, and in the fact that do not take on an opportunity unless you're making money, because it could be very easy to get into an agreement that sounds wonderful. I'm getting my chance at farming. 2 years down the line, you've spent a huge amount of time, and at the end of it, you've not made any money, and you've maybe learned a lot, but you've possibly wasted a number of years of your farming career. So I think, and the other point on that, it's very much it's relationships. You need to get on well with that second party within the share farming or contract farming. If that relationship is not there from the start, then I'd be really worried about going into something for the long term.
No, definitely. I think that's really good advice. And kind of a question leading on from that, in terms of if you are working on a farm, and what would be your best advice to approach your employer around the possibility of getting into some form of shared farming agreement or contract farming agreement? Again, Ben, if you want to answer that, or if anyone else on the call.
Yeah, it's something I've sort of floated here. I'm employed, and I have a nice package, but I suppose have this urge to farm in my own right, to say they're my cows. And it's a difficult one, and it's back to relationships. What is that relationship like with your employer or landowner, farm owner? But my advice is approach it sensitively. Don't go at it saying you're going to take their cows off them, or be too hard, because that farmer, that employer has probably put their life's work into building their herd or their flock, and they maybe don't want somebody just marching in and changing things too quickly or taking control. And I think that's actually one of the barriers in getting into farms, because there's 2 points there. One, sometimes that person that's farming wasn't given the reins till they were later on in life. So they've only just got farming. They don't want to hand on the reins too early. And also, they have invested their life's work into building that business. They might not wish to hand it over for some young gun to come in and say, "Oh, that's all wrong. This is wrong. Let's do a total U-turn and do something different." So it's really, I suppose I think back to relationships.
Yeah, definitely. Relationship building and approaching it in a sensitive manner. I just want to pick up another question. This is actually specifically for Jessie. What did you learn about the application process for obtaining a tenancy? Any tips for success? That is from Anne Young.
So I think the easiest thing is to go for it. Go and attend. Ask all the questions that you possibly can think of. Engage with the agents, engage with the whole process. I think the main thing I learned was the strength of your written application. So the strength of your business plan, the strength of your figures, and the strength of basically your sort of your CV, your makeup of who you are. We hadn't, although my husband worked in dairy his entire life, he'd not farmed by himself, and he'd not worked in beef and sheep. I'd worked in sheep, but I'm completely new in terms of actually farming. It's been a hobby. It's been something I've helped out on farms, but I've not actually farmed. So getting that piece of paper, getting that, I did the Deaf for New Entrants course, attending as many sort of workshops and things as you can, and just ask as many questions as you can to everything, and just go for it. I think the main thing is also just to be really realistic. So when you're doing your budgets, when you're doing your planning, expect that everything is going to cost the most it's going to cost, and you're going to earn the least amount of money for it. If you've got that resilience built into your figures, it works. And it's interesting when you're talking about the support for new entrants, getting the cash behind us to do it was the hardest thing. We've started in our mid-30s, early 40s. We own a house because we've both worked full time, and we bought our own house, and our house is our asset. So we've remortgaged the house, we've borrowed everything to farm, but we're in that position, and we're very lucky that we're in that position. So yeah, you've got to work and get everything behind you and get everything lined up, because you will need to basically either set up a system that means you can work off farm, because you will need that income, or you need to have the money behind you to float it. So yeah, it's just go for it. All you can do is try, and it might take you a year to get it. It might take you 6 years to get it. My cousin went into tenants farming again, same situation. She married a farmer, and it took them 7 years to get their first tenancy. We were really lucky that it took us one. It just depends where you are and how many people are going for it. But try is really what I would say.
I think that's really sound advice, Jessie. I think the amount of people that I've spoken to that have had to do multiple tenancy agreements, but each time the interview process or doing the application has improved their chances to inevitably get that opportunity at the end. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but it's that constant kind of perseverance.
I think farming across the board is something that you learn by doing.
Yeah,
you can learn all the theory, but actually you learn it by doing that, whether it is going through the paperwork and doing that application, or whether it's doing the job and pulling your first calf. You learn it by doing it.
No, definitely. I've got another question from the audience, a slightly different one. It's open to the panel, so whoever wants to pick up on it. I know, Jackie, you talked about kind of access to land and new entrants, so maybe I'll go to you for this one. The member says, I'm not a farmer, but involved in running a good food movement. Members are keen to buy locally and ensure new entrants have an opportunity to access land and make a decent living. We want to be able to access more locally grown fruit and vegetables. Do you think this is realistic? And do new entrants have the opportunity to make this realistic? Jackie?
I think that certainly I know across the country there are sort of different areas where some people have put land aside for people to actually use and grow their own produce on, etc. And in some cases that they've also brought livestock on as well. So they've been doing that as small farming groups. From that perspective, I suppose that people could reach out to some of the larger landowners to see if that was a feasible thing from a, I suppose if you go into some of the larger land ones, maybe from a CSR point of view, people might think that it's something that they could do to help local community groups. So I think that that would possibly be an option for people. And then I think that from the local farmers' perspectives, I mean, certainly from our point of view, we also do sell some meat, which is ours direct from the butcher. So we don't do farm shop or anything like that because we still work full time, so we just don't have time for that. That's a retirement dream somewhere down the line. But I think that there are things in again, local sort of community groups and chats, etc., where people could start to reach out, and there are farmers who would potentially support with that. As I say, we certainly sell meat to people in our locality who are aware of what we do, how we look after our stock, etc., and sort of our ethos behind it. So I think that people could also do that. So I think it probably covers two angles, really, depending upon what people want to do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jackie. And another question from Leonie Parkins. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong there, Leonie. There are lots of enthusiastic non-farming folk who want to get into the industry, but may not be able to go to university, or they don't know a farmer. Do the panel think there is a link missing between people looking to start and the farm looking for help? And how do you think the industry could bring these people together? Brona, maybe if I bring you up on this question, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So I suppose it's one of my biggest regrets in life that I didn't start practical farming a little bit sooner. And I suppose it was because I was missing that link a little bit. Although I grew up in a rural community, for some reason, and it's obviously not reflective of the rest of the country, but for some reason there was very little women working on farms, and there was also very little staff employed outside of the family on these farms too. So I found myself sort of double whammy of oddity, really, and just thought, oh gosh, nobody's going to give me a chance. But I would say just show enthusiasm. I do agree there's a missing link, but I think we need to be proactive. So, if you do perhaps go down a drive, or perhaps message someone or get a contact and just call people up, because good people want to help you if you're a good person at being proactive too. You need to show that willing as well. And I suppose also keeping an eye out. There's plenty of groups on Facebook, sort of agri work type groups as well. I actually find they're really effective. There's lots of engagement on them, and probably lots of other social media too. But try and, if you are someone who's looking for farm work, get yourself on them locally and just put yourself out there, because as I say, if you're proactive, people will want to come to you as well.
Thank you, Brona. And for the rest of the panel, what do you think it takes to try and, bridge that gap between those people that are looking for an opportunity on a farm and the farmers are just not yet seeing that?
I think it's sorry.
No,
Jackie,
sorry, go for it,
No,
Jessie.
it's great. Jackie first, and then we'll go over to Jackie.
There is a missing link. I know we get messages, when I post sort of on our local Facebook pages, I get messages from people saying, actually we want to come and, if you ever need a hand or you need this. And there's always days, shearing, TB testing, the days when you've kind of got everything going on at once, when actually you do need the extra pair of hands. And it's literally just sometimes an extra pair of hands to stand in a gateway. There's not a lot to do, but you just need them to stand there and block a gap. And we started pulling in sort of people that just message us and go, can you help? And we're like, actually, yeah, because there's two of us, we've got very minimal kit, and a person to stand in a gap is much as effective as a gate. So yeah, just ask and just go for it. The other thing I did was I went on a small holding course. I found, a small holding course that did sort of a general, because I'd never done anything. I'd lambed, that was it. I had no experience of any other kind of stuff. And I went and asked a local dairy if I could go and learn a bit about milking, and that was it. So I think you just ask, and most people, it might not be a paid job, but it will be experience.
think it's going down that farm drive, isn't it, and knocking at the door, picking up the phone, and not being scared. Jackie, I know you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think perseverance is a real key thing. That's what people want to see, if they have people helping. So I think sometimes just actually going and having a chat with a person, reaching out to them, I think helps. But I also think those, picking up on Jessie, I used to teach on the holding course at the land-based college, and I think going on a shorter type course, I think is also really beneficial. And the amount of people that are on those courses that don't have any land, any stock at all, these are just things that they want to upskill in, I think has got a great benefit. And I think that if you can then get involved in that sort of, I don't know, that college type environment, it opens other doors for you as well. So it's not sort of a full-time course, it's that just widening your horizons. And you can also then show to people that you go and knock on the door or reach out to, that actually, I've got a real key interest and this is what, I've done about it, etc. And then I think the other thing we mentioned earlier was about the open farm Sundays, that type of open event, etc. Again, going to those type of events and seeing what people do, lambing days and everything, having a look, see if that is really for you, and then have a chat with the person. They're not going to probably want you when they're absolutely neck deep in lambing and they're super busy with all of that period, but they'll have other periods where they will want you to come and help, and it could be blocking that gateway, etc. We always need an extra person, but you start to build your skills from there.
I just wanted to quickly go back to Brona. I know obviously Brona, you're doing your Nuffield Next Gen Scholarship. Actually, you've completed it now. But in terms of that was focused on the dairy sector. We all know that kind of attracting new talent and new entrants into dairy is a challenging one. In terms of your next steps, obviously you alluded to at the beginning of the call that you really want to have kind of your own farm business one day. What are your next steps that you're putting in to try and make that a reality?
Oh gosh. I suppose I am applying for my business ID at the minute, just getting that up and running. Fortunately there's sort of 9 acres of land I can use, which is very little, but it's a start for sure, and it'll mean that I can get that business ID up and running. And then just trying to learn as much as possible as well, and trying to work really, really hard. And folks, listen, life gets in the way. I just bought a house and I'm getting married in a few months. That's not really conducive to going out and buying livestock. So you just need to be patient too. And I have my hopes and dreams, and I'm tapering myself at the minute. I need to be patient, but bit by bit, just keep chipping away at all those little things in your to-do list. I suppose my big thing at the minute is having a plan with purpose. So sort of 5-year, 10-year type plan, making it a real robust, almost like a business or a corporate type strategy document almost for my own life and where I want to be. So make sure it's a plan that you can be proud of as well, and one to hold yourself accountable to. But yeah, certainly be patient, because as I said, life does get in the way sometimes, and other things take priorities, but one day.
No, definitely be patient, but also the idea of having setting mini goals along the way, and having that kind of bigger long-term plan as well, and having that business mindset too, because what many of you on the call have alluded to, that focus is so much now on farm business. We're just going to have a look at another question here. This is from Antoinette. Do any people on the panel, any experiences from family or friends who have lived in the city and moved to a rural setting? Would you have any advice?
Think it's just what we've already said, which is go and get experience, go and speak to people in the area. Basically you can jump all in, but it's a very sharp, very steep learning curve. And you have to have those people that you can phone, whether that's the farmer next door or someone else down the road, to kind of go, help, this is happening. What does this mean? If you're dealing with livestock and things like that, there will always be questions. So I would say get your networks up together where you're going to be, and learn as much as you can and speak to as many people as you can. There's nothing to stop anybody going from, going from town to rural and starting something. Lots of people do it, but yeah, just get the learning in there and the experience as much as you can beforehand, because there is nothing scarier than being faced with something, an animal in pain or having a difficult birth that you weren't planned for, and you need to have that person that you can phone and go help.
Thanks for that, Jessie. I just want to pick up a question from Bridget Bodman, actually, and I think this is in response to our previous question about finding that link. She said, I worry about letting people help out on the farm in case they get hurt. I don't already have employees. I also can't really afford minimum wages or to run a payroll for occasional help. I also think volunteers will take up more time than they save me. This means I don't give people a chance. What can be done to bridge that gap? Ben, if I go to you.
Yeah, it's a whole chicken and egg thing, that, isn't it? Especially when anybody comes to us for work, the first question is, what experience have you got? Oh, well, I've only done this or whatever. So then you go, oh, sorry, you've not got enough experience. Go away and get some experience. And then who do they
do you think that conversation is helpful, Ben, from the experience for those people that are struggling to find work experience in the first place, but have just this underlying passion to get in agriculture? It's a difficult, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. And that's back to the question in the chat about how there's never a right time to give somebody experience, and there is always going to be a risk. I here think very similarly to, and I forget the lady's name that asked the question, Bridget, I think it was. There is a huge risk to bringing people in, and you're also, the exciting bits where people will see things and learn things are also when you're at your busiest, you're at your most stressed, calving time, lambing time, and you're right. Sometimes it can be more of a hindrance than a help having people around. But they will, even if they're not in amongst the nitty gritty of calving a cow, but are nipping around the lambing shed, topping up water pails or bedding pens, they're still getting some experience. So that when they go to that next interview to say, oh, what experience have you got? They can go, oh, well, actually, I helped out with Ben on his farm. They don't have to say quite what they did, but it gives them that wee lift to say, no, I've got some experience. So I think we have to be open to letting as many people on farm as possible, but be careful. There is a risk. Farms are dangerous places to be, and it's just making sure that you're not expecting too much of people, I think. And I've been guilty of that. We do a lot of we employ a lot of apprentices and get them through their apprenticeship and then hand them on. And I'm guilty of saying, oh, there's whoever is free today, I'll send them away to do something. And you go, actually, they've never done that before. So you go and train them up and you expect them to then do it as quickly as somebody experienced would. And then you're annoyed. Oh God, it's taken 2 days. That should only have taken a day. But we have to remember that they don't have that level of experience. So yeah, I forgot what my point was, so I'll shut up. But
no, but it is a tricky dilemma to come. Yeah. No, definitely. Something that we haven't really touched upon yet, but that idea of kind of the perception and the stereotypes embedded within agriculture, and that image that's portrayed externally to the general public about agriculture. How can we change that to help with new entrants into the sector?
I think if I just I think possibly it was Ben earlier mentioned that farming it's not all about sort of everyone being covered in mud and all of those things all of the time, etc. And it most definitely isn't. And there are many different job opportunities in such a diverse industry. I think the British weather causes massive issues trying to get away from that actual image, though, of farmers constantly being covered in mud and everything else, because in reality, that tends to be what we are covered in a huge proportion of the time. But I think it's part of it. So I think it needs to be, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I think it's not something that we should hide away from. I think it is part of what it is all about, and that if you are in the industry and you are working with livestock and you are working in that specific part of the industry, that is an integral part of it, because the British weather is causing havoc for us all, and so that it just comes with it basically. So I don't, it doesn't really sort of answer that question, but I think we should just try and display at every opportunity to anyone that wants to listen, a range of all the things that we do and why we do it. And I think that is a real key part of it. So we're not just showing them one little bit, we're showing them that whole range, and why we love what we do.
No, definitely. Do any of the other panel members want to add to that?
Rachel, what was the question? Sorry.
Oh, so it was just going back in terms of the perception and image around agriculture, how it's perceived externally to the wider general public, and how is that almost hindering new entrants coming into the sector, and how we change that.
Yeah, I just quickly think we are very bad as an industry. We all work silly hours and are crazy, sort of silly fools. Work. We're not helping ourselves at all. And actually, we need to. And it's difficult. And I think it all goes back to what my very first point was about profitability. Unless you're making money, you can't afford to take time off. You can't afford to get people in, and so on and so forth.
Really is at the crux of it, isn't it?
Yeah, we need to get better at selling ourselves and actually looking after people within our industry. I hear of so many farmers that speak of their team as the staff that are expected to do X, Y, and Z. That's not a culture that's going to attract people to our industry. We need to be encouraging people to be part of the team, looking after them very well, giving them great terms and conditions, giving them great housing if they need it, and paying them blooming well. Because I farm 20 minutes south of Edinburgh. I have a city there that's busy, with lots of other job opportunities. People can get paid quite a lot in Edinburgh for doing very little, annoyingly. And then they have to come out to me and go out in all weathers, and work with livestock, as we said, covered in muck. So on the flip side, what I give them and the environment that I give them to work in has to match, if not better, what they would get sitting in Edinburgh, getting paid equally as much. So it is all on us as farmers to sell our industry and make it a better environment to work in.
I think some really relevant points there in terms of kind of the competitiveness of the salary that you're able to give, but also that culture, that environment that you're able to create on farm, and the language being used. I think so often we hear about the staff, and actually we need to think about what language we're using on farm, because it does have implications. So I think that's the majority of questions. We are coming to a close right now, but I just wanted to end this webinar on one final question, which is, what would be your top tip for any new entrant listening tonight to get into the sector? And we only have a minute, so we can keep it really short, but if I can go across the whole panel, that'd be great. So Brona, if I start with you, and then we go on to Jessie, Jackie, and then finally Ben.
Get the right people beside you who will support you and provide a real shining light for your business.
Make sure that your paperwork and your resilience is built into your plans, and get as much experience and talk to as many people as you can.
For me, it would be experience. And if you really have a drive and a passion to get into some part of the industry, follow it, and you've just got to believe in yourself.
I would concur with everyone, but one, don't be afraid to ask. And my final point is, make sure you're having some fun along the way, because what else are we in it for?
I think that's so important, honestly. Thank you ever so much to all the panelists tonight. That's all we have time for this evening, but don't worry, you can listen back to the webinar. We'll make sure that link is shared with you all. We also bring a full written report that will feature on our website, the farmersguardian.com. I want to take this opportunity again to say a massive thank you to our fantastic panel who gave up their time tonight. A thank you to all of you at home for joining and listening and providing questions, of course, which I think have stimulated some great discussions. Please do keep an eye out for the upcoming webinars for 2025, which will be shared on the Farmers Guardian website, and my voice is just holding it together. And if you aren't a member yet, then please do sign up via our website, which is thefarmersguardian.com/become a member. Thank you all for joining, and take care, and we'll see you all very soon.